Breaking Benjamin Netanyahu just humiliated K-Star in front of King Charles at a state dinner that was supposed to heal diplomatic wounds. What he said next triggered the biggest constitutional crisis since the abdication. 3 cabinet ministers have already resigned. Labour headquarters is in complete meltdown, and what leaked from inside Buckingham Palace in the last hour could bring down the entire government. Internal polling shows Labour could lose 89 seats if an election were called today. Conservative MPs are already preparing emergency motions, and the document that surfaced at 11:47 this morning reveals Starmer knew exactly what Netanyahu was planning to say and walked into that dinner. Anyway, if you want to see how this ends, hit subscribe right now, because what happens in the next 72 hours will determine Britain's future for the next decade. Here's what sparked the crisis. Tuesday night at Buckingham Palace, King Charles hosted what was meant to be a carefully choreographed state dinner for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The guest list read like a who's who of British power. Over 150 dignitaries packed the grand ballroom, chandeliers glittered, and string quartets played Handel and Elgar Protocol demanded perfection. Every place setting had been measured to the millimetre. Every wine pairing had been debated for weeks. This was supposed to be diplomatic theatre at its finest, a chance to reset UK-Israel relations after months of tension over Gaza policy. Prime Minister Starmer sat 3 seats from Netanyahu, positioned precisely to avoid awkward small talk but close enough to signal unity. The seating arrangement alone took palace officials 5 days to finalise. But Netanyahu wasn't there for diplomatic niceties. He was there to settle a score, and what he did next shattered 70 years of royal protocol in under 3 minutes. It happened at 8:47 p.m. exactly. King Charles had just finished his carefully worded toast about friendship between nations and shared democratic values. Polite applause rippled through the ballroom. Guests raised champagne flutes. The mood felt controlled, ceremonial, safe. Then Netanyahu rose to respond. Palace aides expected the usual pleasantries. Gratitude for the invitation. Praise for the crown. Generic comments about cooperation. Instead, Netanyahu looked directly at Starmer and delivered what witnesses are calling the most brutal diplomatic takedown in modern British history. His exact words were chilling. Your Majesty, I thank you for this honour, but I must speak plainly tonight because friendship demands honesty. The room went silent. Forks stopped mid-air. You could hear the candle flames flickering. Netanyahu continued, his voice steady, but laced with barely concealed contempt. For months, Prime Minister Starmer's government has questioned Israel's right to defend itself. They've delayed arms shipments. They've condemned our actions while terrorists fire rockets at our children. And then your Foreign Secretary stands in Parliament and lectures us about proportionality, while British citizens enjoy the security Israel provides the free world. The temperature in that ballroom dropped 20 degrees. Starmer's face turned crimson. His jaw clenched so tight that aides later said they thought he might crack a tooth. Several guests at nearby tables shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but Netanyahu wasn't finished. He turned fully towards Starmer, abandoning all pretense of addressing the king. Prime Minister, you speak of international law while ignoring the laws of survival. You criticise our operations from the safety of London while we defend our existence. Perhaps before you pass judgment on Israel, you should ask your voters whether they'd show the same restraint if missiles rained on Manchester. Devastating, brutal, unprecedented. A foreign leader had just destroyed a British Prime Minister at a royal event in front of the monarch, violating every diplomatic norm imaginable. The response was swift and catastrophic. Starmer shot to his feet so fast, his chair scraped across the marble floor. The sound echoed through the stunned silence like a gunshot. His face was scarlet. His hands trembled. His napkin fell to the floor and nobody dared pick it up. Sources sitting nearby say he looked unhinged, like a man who'd completely lost control. How dare you, Starmer hissed, loud enough for half the room to hear. How dare you come into His Majesty's palace and insult the British government? Palace security took a step forward. King Charles raised his hand slightly, a tiny gesture that froze everyone in place. The king's expression, usually so carefully neutral, flickered with something witnesses couldn't quite identify. Shock, concern, or was it something else? Some observers swear they saw the faintest hint of satisfaction cross his face before the mask returned. Lady Catherine Morrison, seated 6 chairs away, later told reporters, "Friends, the king looked like the man watching exactly what he expected to happen unfold precisely on schedule." Starmer jabbed his finger toward Netanyahu. "Israel doesn't dictate British foreign policy. We don't answer to Tel Aviv or anyone else. And if you think standing here embarrassing me changes anything, you've badly miscalculated." With that, Starmer turned and walked out, not excused by the king, not waiting for royal dismissal, just gone. His footsteps echoed down the marble corridor as 150 witnesses sat frozen in disbelief. His departure shattered 300 years of protocol in front of England's elite and the future of British diplomacy. Behind him, the ballroom remained silent for a full 12 seconds before nervous whispers began. Several guests pulled out their phones, despite protocol forbidding it. Within minutes, the world knew. Meanwhile, British veterans who fought for this country, who bled for this nation, who sacrificed everything for the freedoms we enjoy, are living in disgrace. James Morrison, a 71-year-old Falklands veteran from Portsmouth, sleeps rough under Waterloo Bridge because the government that sent him to war can't find him housing. His war medals are in a storage locker he can barely afford. Last month, he told a local reporter he sometimes goes 2 days without eating. "I defended this country," he said, his voice breaking. "And now it's abandoned me." Stories like James's fill every town in Britain. Veterans waiting 18 months for medical appointments, heroes living in mouldy council flats, soldiers who faced enemy fire now facing eviction notices. Terry Williams, 68, who served in Northern Ireland during the Troubles, lives in a studio flat with black mould covering the walls. His lungs are failing and the NHS waitlist for treatment is 14 months. He was decorated for valour twice and now he can't breathe in his own home. While Starmer lectures Israel about morality, British heroes freeze in the streets. The contrast is so obscene, so morally bankrupt that even lifelong Labour voters are turning their backs, but it gets worse. While James Morrison scrounges for meals and Terry Williams struggles to breathe, Starmer's government spent £1.2 billion last year housing illegal migrants in 4-star hotels. We're talking private rooms, 3 meals daily, laundry service, Wi-Fi, medical care, legal representation, all funded by British taxpayers. The Riverside Hotel in Leeds, a facility that once hosted business travellers, now houses 180 asylum seekers at £120 per person per night. That's £21,600 per migrant per year. James Morrison's veteran pension is £9,400 annually. Migrants who broke the law entering Britain get more support than veterans who defended Britain with their lives. The injustice burns. The betrayal cuts deep. And that state dinner humiliation just threw petrol on a fire that's been smouldering for months. Photos circulating online show the contrast in devastating detail. Migrants playing pool in hotel recreation rooms while veterans queue at food banks. Asylum seekers receiving free dental care while heroes wait years for VA appointments. The images are politically radioactive and Starmer's team knows it. Then something unprecedented happened that nobody saw coming. King Charles, who had remained frozen at the head table while Starmer stormed out, did something British monarchs never do. He stood slowly, deliberately, with every eye in that ballroom locked on him. Protocol demands the monarch remain seated until the event concludes royal etiquette. Experts later said Charles broke a tradition dating back to Queen Victoria, but Charles walked across that ballroom floor to Benjamin Netanyahu and in front of 150 witnesses extended his hand, not a formal handshake, but a warm, prolonged grip that lasted nearly 8 seconds. Witnesses say Charles leaned in close and spoke directly into Netanyahu's ear for nearly 30 seconds. The words weren't caught on microphone. The palace refuses to comment, but 3 separate sources at that dinner, speaking on condition of anonymity, all report the same thing. Charles thanked Netanyahu for his candour and said something about difficult truths being necessary. One source claims the king said, "Some lessons must be delivered publicly, however uncomfortable." Another insists, Charles added, leadership requires hearing what we don't wish to hear. Then came the gesture that changed everything. King Charles placed his other hand on Netanyahu's shoulder, a sign of genuine warmth and solidarity that protocol rarely permits with foreign leaders. The cameras captured it all. Within minutes, the image flooded social media. The king comforting Israel's leader after Britain's Prime Minister stormed out like a petulant child. The optics were absolutely devastating for Starmer. Palace insiders revealed Charles was furious not at Netanyahu, but at Starmer's behaviour. The king spent days preparing for that dinner. One senior aide confided that he crafted every word of his toast carefully, reviewed guest lists personally, and chose the menu to honour both British and Israeli traditions. And Starmer destroyed it all with his tantrum. His Majesty was appalled. Another source went further. The relationship between monarch and prime minister depends on mutual respect. Starmer shattered that bond the moment he walked out. The king hasn't forgotten. He won't forget. A third palace official speaking on deep background said something even more explosive. His Majesty has already instructed his private secretary to limit all non-essential contact with Number 10. The weekly audiences will continue because the Constitution demands it, but the warmth is gone. Starmer killed it. Royal protocol demands neutrality, but Charles's body language screamed volumes, and every British citizen watching understood exactly what that shoulder touch meant. The Crown had chosen a side. Constitutional experts immediately began debating whether the king had crossed a line. Professor David Fletcher of Cambridge said the gesture was appropriate given the circumstances, but Dr. Sarah Thornton of LSE warned it could open dangerous precedents. Either way, the damage was done. The image of the king supporting Netanyahu while Starmer fled would define this crisis. The domino effect was immediate and catastrophic. By midnight, British embassy phones in Tel Aviv were ringing off the hook. Israeli officials demanded explanations. The Israeli press ran headlines like, British PM disgraces crown and Starmer's tantrum shocks Jerusalem. American news networks led with the story. Footage of Starmer's walkout played on loop with commentary describing Britain as diplomatically unstable. CNN ran a segment titled Britain's Meltdown Moment. Fox News commentators openly mocked Starmer's temperament. Within 12 hours, £4.3 billion was wiped from the London Stock Exchange as investors worried about Britain's international standing. Tech stocks fell 3.2%. Banking shares dropped 2.7%. The pound dropped against the dollar, falling to $1.24 from $1.28 in a single trading session. Credit rating agencies quietly updated their Britain outlook to negative. Moody's issued a statement expressing concern about political instability. Then the political earthquake hit. Wednesday morning, Foreign Secretary David Lammy held an emergency press conference meant to contain the damage. Instead, he made it infinitely worse. Sweating under the television lights, Lammy insisted Netanyahu's comments were inappropriate and unwelcome, but when pressed on Starmer's walkout, Lammy stumbled, stammered, and finally said Starmer acted with the passion of a leader defending British sovereignty passion. The word detonated online instantly. Twitter erupted. Hashtags like hashtag Starmer meltdown and hashtag passional panic trended globally. Within 20 minutes, even Labour supporters cringed. Passion is what you call conviction. What Starmer showed was rage, loss of control, and diplomatic incompetence on the world stage.